and welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news, TV, social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. So here today we have Annie Calder-Mills from New Forest Mind, Body, Spirit, and we're going to talk about the importance of well-being. Hi, Annie.
Yeah, hi, Sophie.
How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks.
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Here I'm Scottish, but I live in the New Forest, having travelled the world extensively, backpacking and sailing. My husband and I moved here a few years ago and absolutely love it. It's just a brilliant place to live.
Fair enough. So can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you've come to wake up to the benefits of having a healthier and happier relationship with yourself, in essence?
Well, before I met my husband, which is June 2012, I was suicidally depressed. I had more than 10 years, nearly 20 years of depression. And the last 10 years, it became suicidal. I wasn't getting any help from the NHS. They are just so inundated, and they can't really help very much. And I did make the decision that I couldn't live anymore, and I wouldn't be here today if my husband didn't come into my life. Mm-hmm. So he literally saved my life. Mm-hmm. So I'm very fortunate because my husband is a therapist, and he has helped me hugely. And today I am a very happy, positive person. Things are not perfect. Nobody's life is perfect, but that is all an illusion and how you see it.
So what did you change? What did you do?
Well, my whole life changed, first of all. And I suppose I was very lucky. Not only did my husband come into my life, he was living in Mallorca. So I took a risk, actually, because I had a lovely house up in Scotland in Dumfries. And I gave up everything and moved over to the island of Mallorca with him. Mm-hmm. And there was, obviously it's a big decision, but it was like, okay, I can stay here and die.
Yeah.
Or I can take this risk, and if it doesn't work out, that's going to be complicated. But as I'm a sailor, and that was Mallorca, I decided, well, worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, I'll get a job again on the yachts. And I took the risk and went over, and my husband and I are still together today. So,
and it's interesting because you say a risk, but I think sometimes there's opportunities that come knocking the door, and people don't see them because of fear. And fear is only because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, an interesting thing for me, when I was traveling, I feel in those days I was very in tune with my instinct. So I would be working, hanging out in backpacker hostels, basically. You know, you stay there a lot when you're traveling. And maybe I had a part-time job or a job in the hostel or nearby. And I had already decided where I was going to travel next, but I would wait until the feeling would come to go. Yeah. And I remember each morning waking up and thinking, is it time yet? And then the feeling came back that it wasn't. And then it always worked that one morning I'd wake up and I would just and my instinct would say, it's time. And that was it. I was off to the travel agent and got my air ticket or whatever I needed to go off. This was before the days of the internet. So you have to go off to your travel agent. But yeah, it's really interesting. And my instinct served me a lot then. Yeah.
I think, for most people, we just know. The only issue is a lot of the time we don't know how to differentiate between gut instinct and paranoia.
Yeah, I mean, it was easy for me in those days because my life didn't include working a full-time job and the responsibilities of a serious job. And I totally get that, because that when you are struggling to pay your bills and you're working in a job you don't like, because I've done that. I retired from traveling and I found myself living in Brighton, and I was a temp in offices, and I didn't want to commit to a permanent job, so temping suited me fine. You do struggle when you're dealing with stress and you're dealing with fulfilling your basic needs, so paying your rent. It's difficult. It really is. And actually, that it was starting the worst time of my life. Life became quite stressful because I felt completely lost in myself. I had, in effect, retired from traveling. I no longer wanted to travel. And I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't have enough money to do much more than pay my bills. I didn't know about holistic well-being very much in those days at all. I need something else, and I didn't have the knowledge that I do now, that what I needed was holistic well-being, therapists, the help of those people, rather than taking a drug that doesn't always help. I've never taken
tablets. Is that they just make you fuzzy, and they fuzz the problem away a little bit more. I think a lot of the time when people struggle, it's because they are unhappy, they are unfulfilled, they haven't got a purpose, but they don't know how to go about it. So that's why they don't feel, well, I'm generalising obviously, but how they'd feel that, is the only way out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if I could talk to myself then, I would say, Annie, this is what you need to do. You need to eat more fresh fruit and vegetables, and you need to get out and walk fast. Now, they always say walking helps depressed people. Well, I tried that. I used to walk and walk and walk, and I didn't feel any better after it. I felt I was torturing my mind. And but I've recently found out that what I was doing wrong was I wasn't walking fast enough. I needed to get myself breathing harder. And then it has a whole chemical reaction that I can't explain what that is. And so, yeah, it's just getting these tools that if you've got depression, eating fresh fruit and veg, increasing that is going to have a phenomenally positive effect. And I wasn't eating much fruit and veg. I ate a little fruit because I do love fruit, and I ate a little, but I was under the belief, like most people, that fruit has lots of sugar and you shouldn't eat it, where that's actually wrong. I've learned now it's eating more fruit is actually really, really good for your mental health and well-being, as well as your body health.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that nowadays, most foods are processed. Even if you go to a shop and you go for the healthy salad or a sandwich, it's still very much processed. It's not that fresh.
Yeah, I mean, in my life today, my husband and I are actually noticing how our fridge changes from year to year. It's like, I wish I had a picture taken of my fridge each year.
Every year, the fridge safety.
Yeah,
maybe I do start. Now's the time.
I do have one from last year, and it was full of fermented foods that I was making. And I've recently started following a guy called Medical Medium, and I've learned that the fermented foods aren't necessarily doing any good, really. And so I've stopped with them. And what I have done,
I was just about to say, I have to have a very low FODMAP diet, which for people who don't know what it is, in a nutshell, I've got an intolerance to fructose, fibre. So any fruit, veg, fibre, or legumes and pulses are out for me.
Oh, wow. Gosh,
I'm obviously one in a million, as they say.
Yeah, gosh, that's really tough. Gosh,
it is difficult because I used to, have my 10 to 15 portions a day, I hardly get that in a week now, but it's not good for me, you know.
No.
Suppose.
Yeah, wow, that's really tough.
So how do you know, if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, okay, well, that's all well and good, but I eat fruit and veg and then I go for a walk and I walk fast, but what else? How do you think that we can change the belief system maybe? Because a lot of the time it is what we believe that, you know, becomes our own reality, isn't it?
Yeah, no, totally. In my time in living in Brighton, I was actually living in for a while, living in a Buddhist center there, and I that actually was brilliant. I learned a lot of key things that help me still to this day, and one of them is obviously mindfulness. And watching the mind and understanding the illusion of the mind and the ego especially. So when I get I've now learned through my own processes that when I get a negative thought in my mind, I throw it back down into its corner from where it's come from. I said, shut up, I don't want to hear from you. And because I picture a little ego creature hiding in a dark little corner, and it keeps wanting to come out. And you know, when I lived in Hove, that little creature was actually very much out all the time.
I think there needs to be a balance, because sometimes, you know, you have to address the negative thought because it's actually there to warn you of an issue that you need to address.
Well, there's instinct to warn you, but I wouldn't totally agree. Not sure I would agree with a negative thought that comes forward. It could be an instinctive thought around some negativity that could happen. But yeah, we can talk ourselves into a hole, can't we? And we stay there. But it's we need to be like fearless warriors, and we need to just go for it. And
it's getting used to catching yourself, isn't it? When you know you doubt yourself. Okay, is it a genuine doubt, or is it because I don't want to do it, or is it because I'm scared? What is it? It's finding why you're feeling the way you do, basically.
Yeah. I mean, if your fears are based on when you did X, you got that, then yeah, listen to your fears. But 99% of the time, our fears are based on irrational logic, and it holds us back. Now, our fears, we've inherited a lot of our fears through our family upbringing. So if you've grown up in a family that are very negative, and you've been basically conditioned and brainwashed to also be negative, and so you've got to reprogram yourself, and that's what I've been doing over these years is reprogramming myself.
I think there's also the element, you know, obviously we might have evolved, but we've not evolved as much as we'd like to think, and we're still wired like we did back in caveman day. And fear is what kept us going. It was survival, isn't it? Because we would either go away from fear or we would go towards pleasure. But if we've got the choice between the two, we go away from fear, away from pain is what I meant. We go away from pain because pleasure is temporary. And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that. That's why we see the worst case scenario all the time, is because it's our instinct, in essence, our animal instinct trying to protect us.
Yeah, no, totally. We have got the instincts like from the caveman days, totally. We're just catching ourselves and our programs, and I'm always being aware. Yeah, one of the things I see it as a game now. I have some thought that comes up in my mind, and I think, well, that's interesting. Why do I think like that? You know, and okay, right. Okay, should I think like that? Is it a better way to think? And I think possibly because I'm an Aquarian, I start looking at that and looking at me. I'm constantly looking at my thought processes, not constantly, like obsessive, but when I catch myself with a thought process that doesn't serve me, I look at that and think, right, why do I do this? Does this serve me? Okay,
I've got a story about that to a degree. It's a story I used to, well, I still use it, but I used to use up to that particular point I'm about to describe a lot in the coaching sort of thing. And it's that when I was about 7 or 8, long story short, but my auntie gave me a bar of chocolate. We're not talking the small bars, we're talking the 200 grams. And she said, oh, it's just for you. I don't want you to share it. And I said, if I eat that, I will have spots. And I didn't know this at the time. I knew she was a psychologist, but I didn't know she was trained in neurolinguistic programming or anything like that. So she started questioning that belief, saying, oh, well, why is that then? And I said, well, because I do. I said, do you? Do you really? And I was like, well, yeah, my mum said. She said, well, your mum says that. That doesn't mean that it's true. I want you to believe that you never get any spots when you eat that chocolate, and you won't get them. Sure enough, I ate the chocolate the next day, no spots. So that was just to explain the power of the mind and how we can, literally condition ourselves as well as from other people. And as I was telling this story, I realised that up to that point, which is about 3 years ago, I still believed that if I had the entire bar of chocolate, I would actually have spots. I was telling the story, but the belief was actually still ingrained at the back of my mind. And it really is about challenging yourself on everything, really.
Yes, no, totally. One of the biggest keys for me that I've learned too is, and there's becoming more and more awareness of this, is if we have negative people around us, if our core group around us are negative, it can be quite hard for us to be positive. And, I see people reading the newspapers and I think, wow, that's just full of negativity in that newspaper. And I just think that must be painful for them reading that. Their energy just gets depleted with that. Whereas if you're reading something positive, it's uplifting and it's serving you. And so it's really important to surround ourselves with a tribe that resonates with us. If we don't feel uplifted with the people around us, then the people around us do not serve us, and these people will keep you down.
I think that the issue is that sometimes there are negative people in your life you can't remove, though.
Yeah, we can't remove, but what we can do is, instead of engaging with these people, we start looking at how is this affecting me? Why? And asking ourselves, why does that bother me, what that person's just said? Why do I feel like that? And what is it specifically that makes me feel uncomfortable about this person? And then also try to help that person by turning the conversation as much as we can into something positive. For instance, I hear the British are famous for talking about the weather, and I hear it constantly about, the weather. It's either the sun's shining, right? They're happy, but if it dares to get too hot, then they're complaining about the heat from the sun. And then if it gets too cold, they're complaining about the cold. And then rain is a big one for them. It's like, oh my God, it's a terrible day because it's raining. And I'm like, it's not. It's a beautiful day because you're alive. And if you look around when it's raining, like one of the things I love is go into the forest or the woods and listen to the music of the rain falling. And so you can turn it around. And so suggesting things like this to people that are having negative talk, just to try and turn it around, just say with your experiences. So for me, if someone was complaining constantly about the rain, I'd say, well, for me, I love it. I just love listening to the way it sounds when it hits the ground. And so it's... yeah, just to try and watch your mind, guard your mind, guard your thoughts, be careful your ego's not coming up, and just to try and think before you speak and try and help other people in their path with your own experiences.
And some people find it difficult to live in the moment. What would you suggest to them?
Sorry, I don't understand. What was the question?
Some people find it quite difficult to live in the moment.
Live in the moment, yeah. I mean, again, that's training your mind. So when we can train our mind to start thinking that, so you sorry, I just lost. I had to turn my phone off there because it was I had it silent and it kept doing things. So to remain in the moment, it's difficult when you first start to do that. Now, I remember when I lived in Brighton, how difficult it was for me to remain in the moment. But when I did, I mean, fortunately, I lived in a Buddhist center, and I remember we would be in meditation, a guided meditation, and that was my first serious introduction to meditation, and it helped me be in the moment. And I started my training then of being in the moment, and I always thought how wonderful this feels, and I always felt very uplifted. So I would recommend to anyone to start looking at meditation.
And I think it's also understanding that, I know I certainly see a lot of people who look for things in a partner, or single people looking for a potential partner that would bring all these things into their lives. But actually, you have to bring it to yourself. No one is ever going to come and save you. You have to do it for yourself.
Yeah, this is exactly true. I'm very much into the law of attraction, and that which we put out is what we get back. So the universe always reflects back to us. So if an interesting story is, I manifested my husband into my life. So I was suicidally depressed, and this was, I met him in June 2012, and just prior to that, I had been thinking, right, okay, I really would love to have a really good partner, but I don't just want any partner. And this is something really important, is people say, oh, I wish I had a partner. I wish I had a husband or a boyfriend. And it's like, yeah, and because they stop at this, I wish I had a husband or a boyfriend. And then, yeah, they get a husband or a boyfriend, but they forgot to say the important stuff of the positive stuff. So for my husband, I manifested, I now attract my divine partner who loves and honors me as I love and honor him. Now, that's important, because this is relationships where it's only one way. So you got to remember to say who also loves and honors me.
I think there's also an element of timing, because, it's not that I've got mixed views on the law of attraction. I do agree with parts of it. I disagree with other parts of it. But I think that as a rule, in life, it's never going to be perfect all of the time. It's like a wheel. The law of physics say that the wheel is going to go down, but you go back up, and you go back down again, and go back up again. And it's how you handle these things. And going back to what you're saying in terms of like what we attract, well, obviously, if all you think is negative, that's all you're going to get, isn't it? Because that's all you're looking for. That's what you're focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So with the law of attraction, it's my mind just went a blank just now.
Personally, I have found that, for instance, if we take The Secret, one of the guys that was in the film was done and jailed for manslaughter. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to manifest that. That's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, it's because you've got to go through the shit, before you. Yeah. And that's what I was saying with the wheel that goes down and goes back up, because you're not always going to get what you ask for, or you're going to get it, but not in the way that you necessarily thought. Yeah,
for me, and my understanding, and again, with the basis of the Buddhist training that I had, is there's a yin and yang in life. There's the positive and the negative always, because you cannot have one without the other.
Right, now,
yeah. So the important thing is, which Buddha taught, and all the gurus of the ever have taught, is to have an equanimous mind and not to react to anything. So it's, if we can stay in the middle and take the middle way, then that is the way to true happiness. So again, when things come up, now, of course, my beliefs are that there is, we've had many lifetimes, and people listening to this might not have those beliefs. So yeah, these are my personal beliefs based on my Buddhist experiences, Buddhist training from years ago, and also because I've done past life regressions and stuff like that. So we have, it's to do with the karma again. So we create, everything's energy, okay? Like Einstein said, everything is energy. So we have created everything in our life through our thoughts and emotions. And these thoughts and emotions aren't just from this lifetime. These are from many, many lifetimes. And so in a Buddhist term, it's called karma ripening, when something comes up. So some big thing comes up and it's a challenge, or it's not a challenge. Maybe it's like you meet a lovely person in your life or have a great experience. So whatever, good or bad, it's the result of all that you are.
But I think it's also a journey, you know, because, for instance, I've had some tough times in the last the last 10 years have not been great, to be fair, but the last 5 have been ridiculous. But these things happen quite generally for a reason. And yes, you know, we can feel sad and low and depressed and all the rest of it, but it's remembering that these things are happening for a reason. We can't be 100% and on top form all the time. A bit like when you were depressed, you know, if you had not followed the path that you have, seeking alternative therapies, doing all of these things, we wouldn't be talking today, for instance. Mm-hmm. And I think this is people who are feeling low right this minute need to realise that, you know, they have a choice. They can either embrace feeling low and grumpy and sad, or they can choose to kick back. And it is for a reason. I know it's cliche, and I don't like, you know, sometimes saying these things because they said too much and in the wrong context. But it's understanding why we have to go through these hard times, because it's also a way that we can give back later on in life.
You know, I do wonder about that. Things happen for a reason. We hear that quite a lot. And I find it's kind of empty and lacking in a way, because
that's what I mean. It's too cliche.
Yeah. I don't particularly
how it happens.
Yeah, I don't particularly like the expression myself. I find it's misleading. Things happen for a reason. Everything happens for a reason, and the reason, in my understanding, is because we created it just like that. So we create all the good and all the bad in our life. And again, I'm sorry to those that are listening to this that don't agree with that. These are just my own personal thoughts and experiences that have led me to that. And so when a challenge comes up in our life, it's important to try to be equanimous with our mind. That's a big word. Some of you might be looking up the dictionary. I know I did many years ago. So it's to keep a balanced mind. So not reacting to something, just to say, well, that's interesting. So for instance, years ago, I got pulled from a contract that I was working on in Brighton, and I was very upset by it. And of course, it meant that I was going to financially really struggle. But the whole way that it happened, it was very upsetting for me. And actually, as it turned out, it was the best thing that could have happened. But in that moment, it made me feel very insecure. Yeah. But then the following week, I realized, wow, that was really good that I got pulled from that contract, because now I've got an even better contract. So this is the thing, when some big challenge happens to us, is really important. It's very difficult, I understand, because I've been there, but it's really important to take a step back and say, right, okay, this is very challenging for me just now. What can I do about this? Now, what I would suggest is you reach out to people that you can trust to help give you support. And for me, I've got a big tribe of holistic well-being people around me, and I would reach out to them, or my Facebook group. I'd say, hey, I've got this challenge just now, and what do you think? And yeah, definitely reach out to others, and don't sit with it yourself, because when we sit with it ourselves, our ego is having a field day. It's just like, yeah, she's running with that one. Yeah, let's throw out another ball. And the next, you've got so many balls of negativity that are weighing you down, and you just cannot cope. That then energetically is attracting more negative energy. So it's to put those balls down and say, no, I don't want that. I don't want any of those negative thoughts. These thoughts do not serve me. I'm going to find some way of working this out. And so think steps. First step, reach out to somebody, and just take one step at a time. There was
an ancient... we you know, it's like when something happens and it's just going right in your head, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Until you've spoken to someone about it. And that's exactly the same principle.
If something's going round in your head, say a tune, do a little tune in your head and just try and reset that. And so every time your ego throws something up, like negativity, throw something positive back at it. And before you know it, you're starting to retrain your brain. I talk from experience because I find my brain is very, very positive these days. I still have negative programs that I'm working through. I'm human.
Right. And we all are.
and then, so there's still will be things that trigger me, but I look at who I am today and who I was 10 years ago, just say, and I hardly recognize myself. And you know what? It feels good to be me. Whereas 10 years ago, it did not feel good to be me. But today, I am so pleased I'm Annie Corder Mills and who I am and what I stand for and what I believe in. Well, the believe in, there's always ways you can pull that apart, because before you know it, you're like, wow, I used to believe in that and now I don't. But you know, just changing your mind changes your whole universe. And there was an ancient philosopher called Lao Tzu. And years ago, I was introduced to his work through a friend. And the saying that's one of my favorite sayings says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And it's as simple as that. If you remember that, to get from A to B, it takes quite a few steps to get there. But the first thing you need to do is take one step towards that which makes you happier.
And I think that people forget that, you know, again, the general common saying, you can't run before you walk. But think of a small baby, they are never going to run until they crawl and until they walk. And we forget that. We won the results like yesterday, and we don't see that it is a process, basically. Right, Annie, thank you so much for today. That's actually all we've got time for. And for everybody else, if you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, but more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.